It's embarrassing to be a full-time venture investor. That's not a real job, right?
So if we can provide better care at a lower cost for more people, that's great.
I think like the greatest work that I'll ever do, we're doing right now as a team.
No one was trying to shut down WebMD because it was a patient empowerment tool.
It seems like you almost think you've lost a little bit of agency.
The issue with founders is they don't play well with others.
Hey there, welcome to episode 2 of 3Course Founders, where we have deeper conversations with entrepreneurs who are building the future. And I'm excited because today I'm chatting with my good friend, Will Manidis. He was the founder and CEO of a startup called ScienceIO, which built foundational AI models specifically targeted at healthcare. But earlier in 2024, it was acquired for $140 million by Veradigm, which is a public company focused on healthcare data and technology, and where Will now serves as an SVP. We're going to have 3 fantastic courses of conversation together over food and coffee. The first course will be about Will's unique market insights as it relates to the health tech industry, healthcare, AI, and how ventures should think about healthcare opportunities. Then we're going to get into our second course, Mutual Founder Therapy, where Will brings up the concept that he and other founders lose the subject matter expertise, the ability to individually contribute, and some of their agency as they go down the founder journey. And our third course will be about Will's unique strengths and weaknesses as seen by his closest founder friends. And who am I? I'm Sherveen. I'm the founder and CEO of Free Agency. We provide Hollywood-style representation to tech talent. But more than anything, I'm a startup nerd, and I love to have these deeper conversations with my fellow builders. I hope you enjoy the show. Will Manidis, welcome to 3Course Founders.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you as well. This is going to be fun. We're going to have 3 courses. We're starting with coffee.
I'm excited.
Cheers. We should cheers with coffee. I don't know if I've ever cheers with coffee before.
Never.
It's a first. All right, now that we have caffeine.
Some good like ASMR on the microphone.
Exactly. This is actually what 3Course Founders is all about. That'll be interesting in the restaurant.
For that.
Yeah. So we always like to start the same way. Industry insights, the things that, a founder almost always uniquely discovers compared to the actual industry insiders, the experts, but even the VCs. It's usually founders who can distill something that everyone else would really love to understand. What is your health tech insight for the world?
I think if you look at where venture funding is going in healthcare, it's like pretty nonsensical to look at from the outside because like 0 venture dollars hit healthcare and suddenly in like 2 years, billions and billions of dollars are being flown into the field at the same time.
It was like Oscar Health for a while and then nothing else.
It was like Oscar Health's nothing. Yeah. And now like tens of billions of dollars, these like $10 billion digital health specific funds being raised. It's like crazy stuff. But essentially what happened is VCs figured out there's like 3 ways to get software-like growth in healthcare. One is to illegally prescribe pills on the internet.
Hate that one.
It's a fantastic business model that destroys millions of lives.
Yes.
Number 2 is to do like literally healthcare services and pretend that it's SaaS revenue, which is great because prices are set. You can grow quickly. And as long as
are all those people going to die in this new fundraising environment?
Who knows, right? If you never have to report anything that you can only do non-GAAP metrics,
right.
Like you can just report top line. It's great. And the third is to essentially just like, do things that look like telemedicine, but are actually just more obscure kind of online pill delivery.
So it's kind of like combining the first two almost.
It's combining the first two. It's healthcare services plus like a little bit of under the table prescribing.
And so if that's true, right? And we think about the venture model and like the industry of healthcare, does that mean the only actually interesting thing are the 2 things actually that you're closest to? Data, and then actually modernizing at some point, someone's going to figure out how to modernize medical records.
If you look at where healthcare spend is, right? Healthcare is like 20% of GDP.
Yeah.
The vast majority of that is not going towards like software spend. It's not like,
right.
18% of GDP is going to Slack for doctors.
Right.
It's going to like providing care, buying drugs, buying medical devices, and doing like hard physical stuff. That's not like a thing software penetration.
So then what about like, software enabled hardware? So like even the example of like a device that I'm familiar with because my co-founder was part of the team at Butterfly Network, the like portable ultrasound devices. They used also deep learning for like recommendation of how to use that device. Is that like where VC dollars should actually be going?
Hardware businesses are really hard, and then you add regulation on top of them, right? Like I wear an Oura ring. It's a great little piece of hardware, but like at no point do I wish the thing was like FDA regulated. Right. Like I think there's like a great place for consumer hardware in healthcare. I'm just like not fully convinced medical devices are investable in a traditional VC model. I think very little of healthcare is investable in a classic VC model.
Does that mean that everyone who's trying in the big company sphere, like Amazon, et cetera, are going to go, well, this was just not worth doing at some point, or will they figure it out?
What's unique about the big companies is they have timelines that startups don't have, right? If you're looking at a device approval, it's a minimum of 5 years, up to 7 years, depending on your regulatory pathway. If you're Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, et cetera, you can eat that. That's no issue, right? You only have time. The problem with startups have no time definitionally.
Isn't this also true for like the other options you mentioned, which is like the pill delivery and the tech enablement? Because like Amazon bought One Medical or Forward, whichever of the two.
One Medical.
Like, so those two don't seem to have like figured it out themselves, and one of them has exited. Is that because you also need the long time horizon of a big tech company?
I think the brilliant insight that Forward and One Medical had is that you can treat healthcare like a product, and in a place where you see this balkanization of healthcare, where patients are no longer, they're paying out of pocket for better offerings, right? Like relatively affluent patients in major cities are essentially treating healthcare like it's a consumer good and service. They're paying out of pocket. They're not going against their insurance. They're paying for a lot of stuff that like is not traditional healthcare. In that case, you can capture huge markets by having me pay $95 a year for a slightly better service at One Medical, but you actually have to provide slightly better service. And that's traditionally been a thing you can't do in a fee for service model.
And venture dollars can't really solve that part.
Maybe. I think One Medical is actually like a great venture-backed story, but it required a huge amount of capital.
Is there a version of that story that didn't exit though? That didn't exit to Amazon as an acquirer? Is there a version of this that becomes a big company in and of itself?
So much of this is path dependent. I think it's like hard, right? Like One Medical came in a market that was very different from the market we're in, and it was a very hard fought outcome, right? I think there's many direct care delivery startups today that are very interesting, that could be large independent businesses. It's hard to imagine traditional venture models being the best way to underwrite these.
So then let's like actually break that down and say the pill delivery is coming to an end, both because too many people tried it and now it's getting, regulated.
Yeah, people will go to prison.
And people hopefully will go to prison. I'm rooting for them to go to prison.
I think we all are.
Yeah. And then they might even be rooting themselves to go to prison now that they've seen the statistics of what they've cost. But so that's that one. Then the like fake services model, that is maybe if you're already in it and you don't have to report any metrics, you can exist, but won't have like a venture style exit.
Yeah, the terminal value of those businesses are low, but there is value, right?
Okay.
Essentially, all you're doing is hacking cost to capital, right? Where you're raising like a software business until you're ready to go to a growth equity shop that's going to mark you down significantly. But look, if your cost basis is 6 and the growth equity firm is 6 billion, you're fine.
And especially in comparison to like the traditional medical or like professionally driven outlets that would be competing with you.
Absolutely. And if you're a $2 billion healthcare firm that's deploying $1 billion into a really heavy CapEx healthcare services business and 2xing that's a great outcome. You can't get that elsewhere.
So it's kind of like saying because of the tech enablement, we'll have better PE outcomes.
Yeah, exactly. Like all of venture capital is just downstream of private equity, and what we call venture capital won't exist in 2 years, right? There will be like boutique.
2 years.
I think you're already seeing it. Like there's no boutique seed shops left, right? Like you either accumulate AUM and become a private equity fund, and then eventually.
You don't think this is like an interesting tangent? You don't think that we're going to see a bursting of boutique seed shops now that like 2 founders and ChatGPT can be a startup?
I think you will, but it's unclear to me why those companies need dilutive capital.
So we don't like those two, and then we don't like the combination of them. What do we like? If we're going to take like the counterfactual on, VC into healthcare has been a bad idea. What would be an interesting idea?
We love healthcare IT, right? Okay. If you look at where healthcare dollars are spent, an obscene amount of it is going to moving paper around, faxes, PDFs, judgment on PDFs. There's functionally zero software penetration in healthcare proper outside of electronic medical records. And that has been a regulatory enforcement issue, not a product sales issue, right? Like EMRs probably would not exist today if they were not regulated at a federal level. And we had billions of dollars of stimulus to get them into doctors' offices.
Right.
I think where you can actually start to meaningfully make an impact is if you take those paperwork-based processes and start to automate them. These are crazy large monopolistic businesses, and they exist in healthcare. They just look different from a traditional venture software curve.
How?
They take forever to get started. There's huge capex at the beginning. Initial sales processes take like 2 years. However, once you start selling, the ramp is much quicker and they accumulate towards monopolies over time. There are no categories in healthcare that haven't trended towards monopolies over time.
Do you think there's someone doing this well right now?
Ciox Datavant is a private equity backed business that I think will own a huge amount of paperwork based processes in healthcare. I think you will see a lot of these kind of vertical solutions products come in and do really well.
If they start to do really well and you start to see like these players take off, is the most significant portion of their motion and moat going to be regulatory capture?
I doubt it. A lot of the stuff is regulatory adjacent, right? So like paperwork-based processes tend to touch regulated workflows, but are not regulated in themselves. Right. So if you're doing...
As long as you have containment, then that becomes the thing.
You become co-pilots for humans, right? If you want to do something like automate prior auth or automate value-based care, that is really hard. But if you want to serve up recommendations to humans that press enter, your humans are acting as a regulatory shield, you're fine.
So literally, let's take the example of prior auth. You would want something that can go to a contact center of people who approve and call both physicians' offices and patients, and all you're doing is building technology that looks at the data it's allowed to look at, has some real-time sandboxed or contained environment that the call center person can look at, puts in all the information, presses what do I do, and they follow the instructions.
Yeah, this is where I think the real potential comes for healthcare is these people that keep these literally like true American heroes that are just grinding paperwork in these offices have had zero technology to help them. If you build marginally better co-pilots and make them 80% more efficient at their
Shouldn't
job.
have someone done this already? Because haven't we been saying this for like 20 years?
I think so, but I think paperwork understanding is actually a hard problem, and large language models actually are a novel improvement.
Let's get to ScienceIO earlier than I thought then. Tell us about it in summary.
We build foundation models for healthcare. So we have constructed the world's largest healthcare NLP data set and have trained de novo a very large language model that takes healthcare data and turns it into tabular data that's easy to be used computationally. So think of us as a pure middleware solution that takes all the messy data that exists in healthcare and makes it accessible to modern technology tools like Snowflake or Tableau or Palantir. We're the glue that allows healthcare data to actually benefit from modern technology, right? Like you can't use Google Cloud, you can't use Amazon. It's really hard to get healthcare data into formats where these tools are usable. But if we can sit in the middle and provide a solution that makes it as easy to work with healthcare data as it is to work with like an Excel sheet, it's pretty powerful.
And obviously in healthcare, the reason to start there is because they probably so desperately want it.
They do.
But is this principle going to be applied in like a bunch of other industries where essentially anywhere where modernization of the tech stack is hard either because of regulation or because of the messiness of paper data, should there be a ScienceIO?
Yeah, I think if you asked me where you could build a ton of relatively easy couple $1 billion run rate businesses, find wherever there are industries where there's incredibly low margins and incredibly high transaction volume, and either the margins or the throughput is dependent on paperwork-based decision making, and build something that speeds up that flywheel, you will make a hideous amount of money.
Who makes it practical that it saves money? So you're that middleware, and where's the action, downstream of ScienceIO's work that is going to allow somebody to either cut costs or improve margin through either revenue, addition, upsell, things like that?
If you think about how people in healthcare make money, there's essentially 3 levers: provide more care, cheaper care, or care in a population that is easier to provide care for, right? The first 2 are much easier to modulate than the third, right? So if we can provide better care at a lower cost for more people, that's great. The way to do that is to get rid of all the stuff that is not directly primary, like providing care, and just make paperwork 10% faster.
And that in and of itself will be something that some other provider does.
Yeah, we never want to own all the way to the workflow. I think it's important that there are businesses that are specialized in each of those markets.
And so if we go back to what you said people in healthcare should do, being a co-pilot, you're a co-pilot to other businesses. And then it's this idea of being a co-pilot for the humans. And so, I think that's also going to be true even for physicians and care providers themselves at some point.
Likely, I think it's what happens between a patient and a provider in a clinic is so sacred to our healthcare system. Right. I think it will be the last place you see technology penetration. Right. I actually think it's the least pressing place too. I think the paperwork burden is often much harder.
Did you see the dog though that got saved because of the so this is like 3 months ago at this point, but it was one of the first
the ChatGPT dog that had cancer.
For those exactly. So like the for those who didn't see the story, basically this guy goes to the vet, his dog is sick. The first vet's diagnosis and medicine doesn't solve the dog's problem. He puts all the blood work and all the symptoms into ChatGPT. It comes across a different potential diagnosis. He takes it to a second vet who goes, "This seems like it makes sense." Vet prescribes medicine, dog is saved.
Yeah, I think the first place you're going to see ChatGPT make an impact in the healthcare system is patients using it, not providers using it.
Right. Which is like an advanced version of the WebMD problem, though. WebMD enabled patients, which turns out to sometimes work, but sometimes be a critical flaw.
Right. There's very little technology that is universally positive, right? And I think WebMD, no one was trying to shut down WebMD because it was a patient empowerment tool.
Doctors hated the hell out of it, though.
Sure, and doctors are going to hate ChatGPT too.
That's so true.
Right? That's why it's important that we build principled medical first large language models that have actual clinical understanding so patients don't have the WebMD problem but on steroids.
Well said. Let's go have our second course. Cheers one more time.
Cheers.
Awesome. So, Will,
Amazing.
We're getting some food for our second course here.
Fantastic.
I'm excited. We have some oysters. Had to get some oysters.
Incredible for on camera.
Thank you. So as we begin to grub in, let's do it. And we're going to get into the second course here, where we're going to get into mutual founder therapy, which food is going to be a key lubricant. And I feel like we have a good topic here that you and I started to chat about. Thinking through the loss of talent that a founder goes through as they move from being who they were to the founder they now are.
Yeah, I think like when you start a business, you are like somewhat necessarily very deep in a certain area. Like I wanted to be a data scientist. I thought I was a very good data scientist. And then when you start a company, you become necessarily a generalist, right? Which means the best you'll ever be at the thing you care deeply about is like 2 weeks before you start your company. And like you're very much burning the boats to be able to continue to do it.
So, you're burning the boats, but at the same time, you're becoming like a subject matter expert and leader in ways that like non-founders tend not to be. Does that feel true to you?
That feels true. I just think what's hard is everyone who does this kind of stuff is like so career oriented. It can be impossible to feel like you're like giving up something in order to gain this, right? Like you're trading, you're burning the boats.
So it's interesting. I'm thinking about my own journey here as like a product person, and I definitely am doing less UI work than I've ever done in my career. I'm definitely doing less like customer discovery that isn't like fundamental. I'm doing like go-to-market customer discovery as opposed to like deep user research on UX. I'm exploring product less than I ever have. I'm trying to think in my case, if I said that loss is made up for in something else, it's hard for me to say anything other than things that are, I guess, only relevant to a founder, to your point.
Yeah. There's no other job that looks like this.
VC?
That's not a real job, right?
That's true. You think you'll be a VC one day?
No. I think it's embarrassing to be a full-time venture investor.
And yet, for some reason, it is the clear terminal path for all founders. Why do you think that is? Why do you think, other than the proximity we have to it, is it like we begin to become jealous of the lifestyle?
No, I think it's easy to make fun of VCs. I don't think it's like actually that embarrassing to be a VC. I think if you're really good at 0 to 1, which a lot of founders are, you're probably not that good from 1 to 5. And being a VC allows you to work on 0 to 1 repeatedly, like over your entire career. And that's a really appealing thing. The economics of it are just incredible as well, right? It's the upside of starting something, but you're backstopped by management fees, a steady job, the ability to not be caught in the day-to-day. It makes a lot of sense. Like it's a fantastic job.
One of the things I think about there is like, to your point, now that you talk about this loss of talent, if you're a founder and you come out of a business, you're not going to be hired typically, depending on your age and what experience you had before, as a VP or like a SVP or C-level person at any at-scale company. You're considered, we see this with acqui-hires all the time. They're like taking a rung or two down. You might have to take like a director level role, or you might have to go back into IC work if you're a founder that just did like a YC thing and then exited out. Should more former founders be director and above, VP and above at growth stage? Would that be good for legacy companies, big tech companies?
I mean, we love hiring former founders because there's an incredible amount of agency that you gain. Right. There's very few roles you can hire someone for where they can take the org, move it, run the entire thing day to day. Founders have that skill set. The issue with founders is they don't play well with others, right? Like it's really hard for that person to then deal with the bureaucracy of a much larger org and a P&L they don't own and are 100% responsible for. So I think it's a balance, right? Like some ex-founders do really well in acquisition homes. Many don't. I don't think you should be personally planning for that outcome, right? You should only start a business if you genuinely believe this is the last job you'll ever have.
Right.
But you have to plan for the downside case, which I think is a mistake. It's not a bad one.
I mean, for a lot of folks, it's like this notion of
thinking through a skill set that they believe gives them the most agency because being a founder gives them the most agency. For you, in this moment as a founder going through it, it seems like you almost think you've lost a little bit of agency. Or a lot of agency.
I've lost a trade, right? Like software engineers are trade jobs. And in exchange, I've gained like the ability to actually do meaningful work.
Yeah. Interesting. Wait, say more about that.
I think like the greatest work that I'll ever do, we're doing right now as a team. Like we're still pretty small. We're like 20 people. And I think like every day we're there, we're doing the best work of our lives. And I'm happy to give up trade for that.
It's interesting. I'm thinking again about my own path as a product person. I wonder if product is a little bit different. Because like, I definitely have given up the trade in that if I've been doing product work over the past several years instead of building for agency, I'd certainly be a better product person. But I might be like more reflexively able to return to product than an engineer could return to engineering.
I think it's different when you're in a technology company selling to technology companies. These technology companies buy on product, they buy on UI.
Right.
In our world, UI, product, etc., much less important than any number of other factors that goes into a purchasing decision.
Right.
It's a radically different game, and I think as you see more and more venture dollars go into harder and harder industries, like it's just going to be different.
If we buy this loss of agency thing, how does it make you feel to have lost, trade and agency?
I think you have to believe that like the transcendence of the thing you're working on is worth it, right? Like when I see founders struggle, it's because I think they realize that the thing they're tying their life to is just fundamentally not worth spending time on.
And that's when they get the existentialism that manifests as, dread, obviously, but like a sense of I have to make it work.
Yeah.
Even if every signal is now telling me it shouldn't.
Or I think the even worse outcome that you saw a lot over the last couple of years, which was just a sheer denial that you had a responsibility, living in hotels, partying, constant kind of like cocaine capitalism, which is just like disgusting. Like it's fraud, pretty plain and simple.
Whose responsibility is it to give founders a better path? I say this because I think VCs play this really interesting role in all the things you just talked about, where the trade for wealthy people, and it's not just the VCs, it's the LPs, is something like, we need some amount of people to become founders and their early stage employees to be maniacal and to sacrifice in ways other humans don't. And now you're mentioning not only do they sacrifice in effort and passion and all these other things, and they must be a certain type of leader, but they also potentially lose agency and trade.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Is that fair? Or is someone in that transaction like taking advantage of the other parties?
I mean, it's truly obscene the amount of money that tech founders make in successful outcomes, right? Like the common stock corporation is like probably one of humanity's most important inventions, right? Like the fact that you can be employee number 7 at a Facebook or a Google and your grandchildren will never have to work is like a ludicrous thing. Nowhere else in history this happens. I think like, sure, the median outcome is really bad, but like no one's playing this game for the median outcome. I'm not concerned about fairness.
You don't think then VCs have any responsibility to help the post-failure founder?
I mean, I think they do on a personal level, but the firm should not be built to catch the failed founder, right?
Because the firm is just made for the business outcome.
Yeah, the firm is built for returns, right? And I think when firms lose sight of that, it's a bad outcome.
Founders often lose sight of that too.
I think so. I think so much of venture is somewhat necessarily like personal relationships.
Right.
Like it's you and your board member, it's you and your co-founder. And you certainly have like personal loyalty to them. But the firm as a financial instrument has no loyalty to you.
If people understood that better, do you think they'd be better operators?
I think everyone kids themselves that venture is some kind of like kit glove finance thing. Like it's not. Like these are, you are taking money from some of the best endowments in the world and deploying them behind like incredibly risky ventures. There's like seriousness that's required there.
And it should have stayed a smaller asset class because
probably,
of that.
Yeah. Or if it goes up market, it needs a stronger control environment than we have. What we have right now. Governance, like actual governance.
But we've refused that for the past decade.
Governance is back.
Is it back enough? Like what you're telling me, like I always go through this mode of when I start talking with founders, VCs, other folks about this, I go, I don't think about this day to day as I'm operating for agency, but it's like, man, not only should governance be back, we haven't seen a form of governance that should actually exist given the scale of the stuff that we're now doing, like YC and Techstars and like early stage seed funds. We needed to add mechanism to all of this.
I think what's hard is for the top 1% of companies, governance is a net negative. Right. If you have an incredible top decile CEO and management team that's running hard, governance gets in the way. there is a minimum VAR governance that is like ethical and good and reasonable, and it's the legal responsibility of the investors. But these venture funds so engineer for their top case that on a median case, you actually want less governance because it's a more efficient outcome.
This is actually fascinating because so much of the bad behavior in venture is to try to protect the power law outcome. But now that we have so much happening in venture, the volume of things happening is so high, maybe it's bad to protect for the power law outcome? I mean, it's good for the power law outcome, but is it bad for the world?
I'm not convinced the median 10-person startup that blows up is that harmful to the world.
That tragic.
It's obviously quite painful for the people involved. But as long as you're returning money to your LPs, it's a pretty reasonable thing for the failure rate to be quite high.
I wonder what the counter argument to that would be. So, like, if it's tragic, it would be tragic because VC has gotten really good at screwing up business model. Let's take like a weird example.
I mean, I think the counter argument is that the ability to shoulder failure is unequally distributed. Right, like rich white guys amongst people, like rich white guys from the Northeast can talk easily about failure when others can't because there is no social safety net for this kind of stuff.
100%.
But it's horribly efficient at the median.
Well, and I guess like the other thing about that is it's an opt-in game. We've unfortunately made it so, again, the volume of what's happening in terms of the amount of startups, the amount of firms, the amount of funding, therefore the amount of employees, to increase that volume without also advocating for safety nets, we've drawn in, right, a bunch of people who shouldn't necessarily be startup people as employees. We've drawn in a bunch of them as maybe even founders. They don't have the ability to kind of be resilient. So we turned a resilience game into a general employment game, but without having the ability to educate and support a bunch of people who don't have the societal privilege.
I think the market will solve this, right? Like, a lot of people are like, oh, there are too many startups, too much stuff is getting funded. The way you control that is you limit the amount of venture funds. And the way you limit venture funds is the median venture fund will not generate returns above 1x DPI. The LPs will reallocate away from that. Like, the market equilibrium here is correct.
Okay, so we've got some ice cream. Well,
cheers.
Cheers to ice cream, and I don't know what flavors these are, but that looks coffee.
Coffee?
Maybe green tea right there and some vanilla joint right here. So as we dig in, I talked to some founder friends of yours, and I asked them, a variety of questions that'll fuel some of my questions to you about what they think of you or what they think other people think of you.
Amazing.
And let's start with an easy, softball. Why is your hair so good?
My dad's Greek.
Is that easy? Wait, aren't a lot of Greek men bald?
Yeah, I feel like you have to be so mainland Greeks tend to be bald, island Greeks tend to maintain their hair.
Oh. So that's it.
My dad's
products.
No products, yeah.
Zero products. The next one that's interesting, someone said of you, most of the time you should take Will seriously, but not literally. I'm curious as a founder how that manifests. As a person, I think anyone who's listened to this far has probably understood why that is a thing someone would say about you. But as like an operator, how does that manifest?
I think you can't do this bit when things matter, right? Like, I think that you can do like the random Straussian read on everything, and that's fine. But you end up with like as Tyler Cowen at the end of that, and like you can't do that if you're running a business, right? So I think
have you accidentally done it while running the business?
Yeah, of course. You can do these like I'm going to tell you the thing I don't want you to do, and you're going to figure out the correct thing, but that never works out. Like, you just have to be direct with people. I tend to at work exclusively communicate through memos. I think it's way easier. I'm like,
are they things that you like sit on, or are you like, oh, first draft, I can do this in 10 minutes and press send?
I'm like Donald Rumsfeld. Like, I'm like turning out like thousands of memos a day, like just dropping it in boxes.
And so your memos are less like, wow, this is a big memo doc that you've got to take.
No, it's like a note. It's like, hey, we had this conversation. I've reflected on it. Here's where we're at. I'm really bad in like person to person. Like, I have zero social skills. So if I'm like having a one-on-one with someone, like there's nothing productive coming out of that. But I'm going to go back, sit at my desk and be like, oh, wow, this makes sense, and deal with it.
Do you memo to individuals in addition to groups?
Yeah. Often memo more to individuals than to groups.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But they're just emails. Like, Everyone wants to call them
That's
memos.
such a good
right?
take.
Like, Amazon does this big thing about memo culture.
Yeah.
They're just long emails.
Long emails. It's funny. This is like the truth around most communication is it's just some other simpler form of a letter.
Like people want like these official memos. What writing encourages you to do is be really firm and clear about what you want, and everyone's afraid to do that.
Have you ever met Bezos?
No.
I feel like that'd be a fun conversation to have with him about like what really drove his memo culture, because he obviously talks about it all the time. But
I would love to know how much he can deadlift.
I mean, at this point, a lot. That's all he's doing. Mm-hmm. He's living his dream. Do you want to be Jeff Bezos one day?
I would kill to be able to, deadlift as much as he can. I could. I have a weird skull shape.
I thought that too.
Yeah, I have like some weird bumps going on in the back. It would not be good. If I go bald, it's over for me.
We can just try it.
No.
I mean, that could be another scene that
you've seen my skull. Like, there's, I'm at like the 99th percentile for diameter, height, the whole thing. You don't want it bald. It would look like a small planet.
Maybe that's how we get to Mars. We use the gravitational pull.
It would have orbit. The AirPods stay in.
So that's the literally not seriously taken. That's a good one. I think that makes sense. I asked your founder friends if you were going to start a different venture-backed company tomorrow, what do they think it should be? One of the answers was Palantir 2.0. Why is that one of the answers?
I think Palantir is a remarkable business. I think providing data analytics to customers who require really high precision data analytics is a great thing. I think LLMs are clearly a way to build a more efficient and capable Palantir than having, hundreds of forward deployed engineers. I think there's a question of, is Palantir going to become Palantir 2.0, or will someone build a Palantir 2.0?
What's your hypothesis there?
The people I know that are there now are very good, and they're very good in a way that the organization has not been for a while. I think there's very much a crew that is excited to turn that thing into a monolith.
And so it's basically a three-pronged question then for them. It's like, one, can you fight the things that usually make a legacy company not the next version of itself? Two, can that group of people that's better than it's been in a while continue to be better than it's been in a while? And three, does some other upstart just like kick them in the butt?
I would never bet against Alex Karp. I think like Alex Karp is probably the most underrated tech executive.
What do you think people who don't like Alex Karp get wrong about him?
I think the Palantir gets branded as a shadowy defense tech contractor that's doing horrible black work. So little of their business is that kind of work, if any of it. And I think people like to brand it as a services organization. I think in general, services are massively underrated as a way to build great software businesses.
Another answer that I got that's related to this is someone said that the other startup that you could build is something in infrastructure for the DoD. Why is that an answer that's about you?
I care a lot about government efficiency, and I think the U.S. defense apparatus probably should be privatized more aggressively than it is today. I think Andrew
convinced me.
The dollar efficiency of government research is next to zero, right? If we start bidding out capabilities to not cost-plus contractors, but contractors that are actually doing product development.
Historically, that's not true, though, right? Like some of our best innovations have come from government and government contracts.
The government that developed our great innovations in the 60s is not the government we have today.
Isn't the solution to build that government again?
Maybe. Good luck. I think like if you want to...
I'm going to undergo that.
if you want to do it, I think the best way to do it is to make it really easy to build product-based contractors that are bidding lower cost options to capabilities that our defense apparatus needs.
Why would you pick to take the challenge of privatizing it versus making the government do that?
I'm not good at policy. I'm pretty good at product.
Let's abstract that away for you directly. Let's say that you were going to pick one of the solutions for everybody. Why would you pick privatizing versus government?
Markets are the most powerful tool we have. If you're able to provide a capability that's better, cheaper, stronger, more reliable
Why did the government of the 60s and beyond beat that as a notion of innovation?
We got very complacent after the Cold War.
So we need an enemy.
I mean, I think we have a great one right now.
But it's not motivating us in the same way that like past enemies did to innovate.
That's what's concerning. But a lot of people at Androl are motivated by it.
Right. I mean, it's interesting because I feel like I hold the interesting two takes in my head at the same time, which is I believe the reason we don't have a government that can compete on this notion is simply because a whole host of individuals over the past 3 decades has dismantled the ability of the government to do these things. And I also support Androl and other companies who are innovating in ways that we must, because we must be competitive.
That's certainly a take. I don't know if it's mine, but I do think in general tech people underrate the impact that policy can have. I think the average dollar donor efficiency of tech people in policy is next to zero.
Right.
It's shocking when there's incredibly efficient technology policy orgs.
Right. Do you think there's a way in which we have some sort of consensus on this soon? Because I think there's a whole host of people who won't want it privatized. There's a whole host of people who won't support more of a relook at government becoming beefy in an attempt to make it better. Where do we go?
I have never been more confident that this is solvable. I genuinely think the markets will solve this.
And Anduril, Palantir types are giving you hope?
It's both that and just the amount of young people that are willing to work in defense, right? When I left college, if you went and worked for a prime, you were branded as an enemy of the state, right? Politics was whatever made you feel good, not what was necessary.
Right.
And now the smartest young engineers I know are going into defense.
Last thing from this set of emails. Someone said that you have great taste in office space. You like our office, so I agree with that.
I do.
Thank you. If you had to dream the perfect office right now, what would be the key feature?
I would kill for indoor-outdoor space. We have a beautiful floor plate in Flatiron, but you're on the 12th floor of an old brick building. You can't go outside.
Right.
I do think if you were in, the South Bay, there's no reason to not have kind of like a outdoor desks where you have correct shielding so you can use computers outside. I would like to spend as little of my life as possible indoors.
Do you think that there's any productivity loss to that? I mean, I think it's beautiful. It's attractive. It attracts talent.
There's probably productivity loss because your laptop overheats all the time. But like if you fix that and make it productive, I don't think so.
Anti-glare monitors.
Yeah, anti-glare monitors, some shielding, some sunscreen. It's workable.
We should make that happen.
We should, yeah.
Before we wrap here on this 3-Course Founders, is there anything you think the world should know that they don't?
I think you should probably not be going into enterprise software today.
That's a good call. I agree with that.
The marginal cost of enterprise software is about to cut to zero. The only thing that matters is sales efficiency and distribution. I think that's where you should spend time.
Good call out for all the founders and operators listening out there. Where should they find you?
Twitter, Will Manidis on Twitter.
It's a good Twitter account.
It's a good account.
It's a fantastic account. I know more about that account now than I did, yesterday. And I'll say also the mechanics behind it are fascinating.
Amazing.
Thanks, Will, for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Boom.
I just really want Guantanamo closed. This is my only policy position.
We got that on audio, right? I'm putting that in a clip by itself.
Yeah,
None of
please.
the other surroundings at all.